Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, Kemi Badenoch is doing a great impression of a runaway train about to derail itself. Her latest PR disaster is getting caught out lying about her past. She claimed she'd been given an offer at the world renowned Stanford Medical School based only on grades she got at 16 years old, just to emphasize her genius. Only seems a few people at Stanford, including the admissions tutor at the time, said, this is a complete nonsense. Not only was she not offered anything, the course she claims she had the offer for didn't exist. So why did Badenoch lie about it in the first place? And why is she incapable of realizing that she's just digging herself deeper with her reaction to the revelations? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So I have to say, I've learned that Kemi Badenoch and I have something in common. We both wanted to be doctors when we were young. We both failed to get into medical school. We both got insufficient grades for the job, and we both blamed our schools at the time. Difference is I grew up and took responsibility for my own failures as an adult. Badenoch still pushing her false hard luck story, well into her 30s to begin with as an MP, and now she's doubling down on it, despite what Stanford themselves have said, well into her 40s. Which is why this is blowing up in her face right now. But before I go over the details, let's just point out the usual hypocrisy here. Because in the last year, Badenoch has been having to go about inconsistencies in the CVs of Jonathan Reynolds and especially Rachel Reeves. So let's just remind ourselves what they were. So Rachel Reeves had her employment history detailed on her LinkedIn profile. A lot of people do. It was spotted that she'd listed her period of employment at the Bank of England, where she worked as an economist, as being from September 2000 to December 2006. But it was pointed out she actually left in March 2006. And yes, that's what all the fuss was about. She didn't lie about the job she did. She didn't lie about what the job involved. She didn't lie about the place she worked, or even the fact that she'd worked there from 2000 to 2006. The CV just had the employment lasting a few months longer than it really did. Now, I'll be honest, if I had to write out my CV, I'm not sure exactly how accurate that would be, because I don't really have records and I don't think it's fixed that firmly in my head. She didn't lie about the job she did. She didn't lie about the place she worked. She got a date wrong by a few months. Not even like she said she worked at a place for 10 years and it turned out to be 6 weeks. She worked at a place for 5.5 years and her CV suggested it was more like 6. Not exactly scandal of the century. Now, the criticism of Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, that's a bit more serious. So his included a period where he worked at a particular solicitor's firm, and he did work at that solicitor's firm. But if you'd read it, apparently, unfortunately, I didn't see it before it was changed, because it was changed as soon as it was pointed out. If you read it, apparently, you would get the implication that he worked there as a solicitor. When he didn't, he worked there as a trainee. That's it. That's more serious. That is more serious. That's more than just careless. But again, when it was pointed out, it was corrected. Not that Badenoch spends much time attacking Reynolds where you do have a genuine, ooh, that was a bit dodgy. Reeves is the one she wants to take down because she is the one pushing economic ideas that she doesn't like, right? So now let's look at Kemi Badenoch. The Tory MP, remember, who openly admitted hacking a Labour MP's website, a crime which carries a potential custodial sentence of 5 years in prison if she'd been investigated at the time. So we already know she's criminally dishonest by her own admission. And now she's dropped herself in it again. She claimed she was offered a pre-med course at Stanford, one of the most prestigious medical schools in the world, if not the most prestigious, based purely on the grades she had at 16 from her Nigerian school. She claims she wasn't able to take it up because her grades went to shit at her British college because the teachers were crap. Although as a teacher, I'll tell you exactly what I think happened. First, she moved to a different country. I mean, the culture shock could have put her off her stride, perfectly understandable, but that's not the fault of the college or the teachers. Second, there are plenty of students who are bright enough to get through their exams at 16 and then fall flat at 18 because of the jump up in difficulty. There's not a lot of problem solving required for GCSEs or even O-levels, mostly recall. At A-level, it's different. Basically, she didn't put the work in, just as I didn't myself. The curse of finding things naturally easy through most of your school years is that when things get tough, you sometimes don't adapt in time. But I won't go on about the educational theory side. The point is that Badenoch claimed to have been offered a place at 16 for a course at Stanford, as well as other prestigious universities, which is completely untrue. The admissions tutor at the time, according to The Guardian, said she 100% did not get such an offer. And he's certain of it for a number of reasons. First, the course didn't actually exist. Now, Badenoch's now claiming, oh, I used the term pre-med just to mean this sort of thing. It's like, no. No one's saying she got the name wrong. The course itself doesn't exist. The actual course doesn't by any name. Second, that no student would be offered a place based on grades alone, let alone grades at 16 years old. Even if you were a child prodigy, they said, there would need to be a load of other evidence in the mix. And third, the absolute killer, this particular tutor says, look, he remembers he made offers to students from, various countries in Africa, but none ever from Nigeria. So he's not trying to recall her name, which wouldn't have been Badenoch at the time anyway. He is certain there were 0 students given offers from Nigeria at the time, which therefore means definitely not Kemi Badenoch. He and other people from Stanford have also pointed out more aspects to Badenoch's story, which are comically impossible as well. You could read that yourself. I'll put a link to the article in the description. The fact of the matter is, she lied about this when she was given interviews as a new MP in 2017. This isn't surfacing as a lie she told as a teenager, right? This is lies she's told in interviews as an MP in her 30s. And now she's still lying by doubling down instead of apologising and moving on. Did she learn nothing about the hazards of doubling down from the way Boris Johnson dealt with Partygate? Yes, this is nowhere near as serious, of course, but the basics still apply. If you're caught lying, don't carry on lying, because then people will think you're habitual. So why did she lie, and why is she still lying? Well, my hypothesis comes from her recent interview in the Sunday Times. I've already described it in a recent video. It was a mix of blaming her predecessors for the mess her party's in now, which is partially fair, but also how great she is at everything. She's conceited. So picture it. She wants to be a doctor as a child. Her parents were doctors. Her father's a GP, her mother a professor of physiology, so a medical family. But she fails to get into medical school. Her A-level grades were nowhere near good enough. So if you're a bit conceited, as both she and I were at the time, you look to blame others. She blamed her teachers. Now, I never blamed my teachers for my grades. I knew that was my fault, but for other things as well. Don't need to bore you with that. But a few years later, I stopped sulking and grew up. I didn't prioritise my own grades, so whatever grievances I had with my own school, which are actually fair, I still only had myself to blame for not working hard enough when I knew I needed to work hard. Kemi Badenoch appears not to have progressed to this same level of self-introspective maturity. The lies which protected her teenage ego were still being offered up when she was being interviewed in major media outlets in 2017 as a new MP. They have since resurfaced, and it appears that some journalists have approached Stanford to verify them. So why is she persisting with the lies? Because she cannot face up to her own failings. She has no failings. She's great, remember? She says so very explicitly in her Sunday Times interview last month. And I'm going to bet she'll say so again in her conference speech in a few weeks' time. I think that, I've said it before, that interview was a dry run for the conference speech. Everything that's bad that's happening to us is their fault. I'm great. And this should be a warning for Conservatives. The people running your strategy need to be able to accept that when the strategy is failing, they've made mistakes. Someone whose instinct is to blame others for misfortune is not going to solve the problems because they do not accept that they're influencing the problem. And Kemi Badenoch can still not accept her own failings when she was 18 years old. It's true, the Tory brand isn't a mess and her predecessor trashed it. Absolutely true. But it is also the case that her party's poll rating has fallen a lot since she took over as leader. That is on her. She doesn't even have Labour's excuse that the media's failing to give her a fair hearing. They're bending over backwards to help her out. She's just incapable of capitalising on their help or feeding them the lines that would boost her party. Maybe not so much Labour because Farage is their problem, but I would certainly advise the Lib Dems to lean more into this. They know that Badenoch has lied about her past, and they know that when caught, she doubles down. I'd keep pushing this because it's clear that whenever Badenoch finds herself in a hole, her response is to dig downwards. But maybe Labour could poke at Farage. See, he has way worse skeletons in his closet than blaming teachers for crap grades. Fascist behaviour at school, singing Hitler Youth songs. He denies it, but there's documentary evidence to the contrary. I've said before, Labour should talk more about the things which makes Farage uncomfortable, and that can include his own personal past, as well as his party's current policies. But as for Badenoch, the Tories are in a bit of a hole now, aren't they? Keep her, and things are not going to get any better. She doesn't live in the real world, and yet the party's problems are very real and need real solutions. She just blames others and does nothing. But get rid of her, and as well as looking chaotic, they risk someone even worse, trapped between a rock and a hard place. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and for more content you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.